The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with nervous energy as Ambassador Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire stood before the assembled representatives of 47 star systems. His blue-scaled hands trembled slightly as he activated the holographic display, showing grainy footage of what appeared to be a massive metallic structure drifting through the void of space. Esteemed colleagues, Kethvar began, his voice carrying the weight of genuine fear. What you are about to witness will change everything we thought we knew about warfare in our galaxy. The hologram flickered to life, displaying a ship unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Where most vessels in the galaxy followed sleek, aerodynamic designs optimized for atmospheric entry, this monstrosity appeared to be built purely for space combat. Its hull was a dark, matte black that seemed to absorb light itself, and its surface bristled with weapon emplacements that defied conventional understanding. Admiral Thexani of the Rigel Federation leaned forward in her floating chair, her tentacles writhing with anxiety. What species built this abomination? The design principles are completely alien to our understanding of ship construction. That's exactly the problem, Kethvar replied, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. They call themselves humans, and they come from a system so remote that our long-range scouts only discovered it 3 months ago. A system designated by their primitive coordinates as Sol. The footage continued, showing the human vessel as it approached a Zephyrian patrol fleet. The patrol consisted of 5 modern cruisers, each armed with the latest plasma cannons and protected by state-of-the-art energy shields. They had encountered what they assumed was a derelict ship and moved to investigate. The humans made no hostile moves initially, Kethvar explained, his scales shifting to a pale blue indicating distress. Our captain, following standard first contact protocols, transmitted universal greeting frequencies and mathematical sequences to establish communication. On the display, the massive human ship slowly rotated, bringing its weapon arrays to bear. Even the council members who had seen countless battles in their lifetimes felt a chill as they witnessed the sheer number of gun barrels emerging from hidden compartments along the vessel's hull. The response was immediate, Kethvar continued. Not from their weapons, but from their communication systems. They spoke in perfect galactic standard, as if they had been monitoring our transmissions for years. The recorded voice of the human commander echoed through the council chambers, crisp and confident. This is Captain Sarachan of the Terran Defense Force vessel, Indomitable. You have entered human territorial space. State your intentions or prepare to be engaged. A collective gasp rose from the assembled delegates. The audacity was breathtaking. A single ship from a species that had supposedly just achieved interstellar travel was threatening an entire Zephyrian patrol fleet. What happened next? Demanded Counselor Vextra of the Centauri Coalition, her mechanical limbs clicking nervously against her chair. Kethvar's expression grew even more grim. Captain Zorthak of the lead cruiser attempted to explain that this was Zephyrian space, claimed through right of exploration over 2 centuries ago. The human response was swift and terrifying. The holographic display showed the human ship's main guns swiveling with mechanical precision. What followed defied every principle of space combat known to the galaxy. Instead of the elegant dance of long-range energy weapon exchanges that characterized modern warfare, the human ship opened fire with projectile weapons of impossible scale. Massive kinetic rounds, each one larger than a shuttle, streaked through space at velocities that should have been impossible to achieve with conventional propulsion. The Zephyrian shields, designed to deflect energy-based attacks, proved utterly useless against the raw kinetic force. The first cruiser's shield generators overloaded within seconds, and the projectiles punched through the hull like it was made of paper. Impossible, whispered Admiral Texani. The energy requirements alone should have made such weapons unfeasible. How did they achieve those velocities? We don't know, Kethvar admitted. Our best scientists have analyzed the footage repeatedly. The projectiles appear to be accelerated by some form of magnetic propulsion system, but the power output required would drain the energy reserves of any known ship design within minutes. The footage showed the remaining 4 Zephyrian cruisers attempting to return fire, their plasma cannons lighting up the void with brilliant streams of superheated matter. The beams struck the human ship's hull and simply dispersed, as if the dark metal surface was designed specifically to dissipate energy-based attacks. Their armor technology is equally baffling, Kethvar explained. The hull appears to be composed of multiple layers of unknown alloys, with some form of reactive armor system that actually strengthens upon impact. Our plasma weapons, which can melt through standard military-grade hull plating in seconds, barely scorch their outer layer. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 3 minutes. The human ship methodically destroyed each Zephyrian cruiser with a precision that suggested their targeting systems were far superior to anything in the galactic arsenal. Not a single shot was wasted, and each projectile struck exactly where it would cause maximum structural damage. The final transmission from Captain Zorthak before his ship was destroyed was a simple message, Kethvar said, his voice barely audible. He managed to send a single word through quantum communication: run. The council chamber fell silent as the holographic display faded. 47 different species, representing the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, sat in stunned silence as they processed what they had witnessed. Counselor Kixmoth of the Arcturus Assembly was the first to speak, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated light patterns. This changes everything. If a single human vessel can destroy a patrol fleet without sustaining any damage, what happens when they decide to expand beyond their claimed territory? That's why I've called this emergency session, Kethvar replied. Intelligence reports suggest the humans have an entire fleet of these ships, possibly hundreds of them. They've established a perimeter around their system and are actively patrolling what they consider their space. Admiral Thexani's tentacles writhed in agitation. We need to know more about their capabilities. Have there been any other encounters? 3 more, Kethvar confirmed grimly. A Rigelian exploration vessel, a Centauri trading convoy, and a joint scientific expedition from the Vega Collective. The pattern is always the same. The humans issue a warning, give the ships exactly 30 seconds to respond, and then open fire if their commands are not obeyed immediately. What are their demands? Asked Counselor Vextra. Complete withdrawal from what they consider human space, Kethvar replied. They've established a boundary extending 50 light-years in all directions from their home system. Any vessel that enters this zone without prior authorization is considered hostile. The implications were staggering. 50 light-years represented a massive volume of space, including several important trade routes, and at least a dozen systems that various galactic powers had been in the process of colonizing. This is unprecedented, declared Supreme Counselor Thek, the ancient leader of the Galactic Council. Never in our recorded history has a single species made such aggressive territorial claims. The established protocols for new species integration simply don't account for this level of technological superiority combined with territorial aggression. There's something else, Kethvar added reluctantly. Our xenobiologists have analyzed the limited data we have on human physiology. They come from a high-gravity world with an extremely hostile environment. Their natural physical capabilities far exceed galactic norms, and their psychological profiles suggest they're naturally adapted for warfare. A warrior species, Admiral Thexani murmured. That would explain their ship designs and tactics. Not just warriors, Kethvar corrected. According to our analysis, they're survivors. Their homeworld appears to have subjected them to constant environmental pressures that forced rapid adaptation. They don't just fight, they learn and improve from every encounter. The council members exchanged worried glances. A species that combines superior technology with natural combat instincts and adaptive learning capabilities represented a threat unlike anything they had ever faced. What do we know about their numbers? Asked Counselor Kixmoth. Limited intelligence suggests their population is in the billions, Kethvar replied. They've achieved a level of industrial capacity that allows them to construct these warships at an alarming rate. Our best estimates indicate they're adding new vessels to their fleet every few weeks. Recommendations? Supreme Counselor Thek asked. Kethvar straightened, his scales shifting to a more confident blue hue. I propose we establish a first contact protocol specifically for dealing with the humans. We need to open diplomatic channels before their expansion brings them into direct conflict with our member worlds. And if diplomacy fails? Admiral Thexani asked. The chamber fell silent again as everyone contemplated the unthinkable possibility of a war against an enemy whose single ship could destroy entire fleets. Then, we'll need to consider alternatives that have never been necessary in our galaxy's history, Kethvar replied solemnly. Because if these humans decide to expand aggressively, our current military doctrines and technologies will be utterly inadequate to stop them. As the council session continued into the night cycle, one thought dominated every delegate's mind. The galaxy's balance of power had just shifted dramatically, and they weren't sure they could shift it back. 3 weeks after the emergency council session, the most advanced diplomatic vessel in the galactic fleet approached the boundary of human space. The ship, designated as the Harmony's Voice, carried representatives from 12 major galactic powers and was equipped with every known communication technology, defensive system, and diplomatic protocol in the galaxy's archives. Captain Veltran of the Andorian Diplomatic Corps stood on the bridge, watching the sensor displays with growing unease. They had been monitoring human communications since crossing into the outer detection range, and what they had discovered was deeply troubling. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Commander Xera from the communication station, "we're receiving multiple targeting locks from at least 6 different sources. The humans knew we were coming long before we entered their territory." Captain Veltran nodded grimly. Intelligence reports had suggested the humans possessed advanced sensor technology, but this level of detection capability exceeded even their most pessimistic projections. The diplomatic vessel was still 30 light hours from the nearest human patrol route, yet they were already being tracked with military precision. "Any response to our diplomatic identification broadcasts?" Beltran asked. "Negative, sir. We've transmitted the standard first contact packages in 47 different languages, including mathematical progressions and universal peace symbols. The humans are maintaining communication silence." Ambassador Kethvar, who had volunteered to lead this crucial mission despite the obvious dangers, approached the captain's station. His scales had taken on the deep blue coloration that indicated extreme stress among his species. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach," Kethvar suggested. "The humans have demonstrated they prefer direct communication. Maybe we should simply request permission to speak with their leadership." Before Captain Veltran could respond, every display on the bridge suddenly flickered and went dark. When the systems came back online moments later, they were no longer showing the ship's normal sensor readings. Instead, a human face appeared on the main screen, causing several of the bridge crew to step back in surprise. The human appeared to be a female, though the diplomatic team's xenobiologists had warned that human gender identification could be unreliable without proper context. She wore what appeared to be a military uniform of dark blue fabric with various metallic insignia, and her expression conveyed a level of confidence that was both impressive and intimidating. "This is Admiral Rebecca Martinez of the Terran Defense Force," the human said, her voice clear and commanding despite the impossible distance. "You're currently within the outer perimeter of human territorial space. State your intentions immediately." The fact that the humans had somehow taken control of the ship's communication systems sent a chill through the diplomatic team. This level of technological infiltration should have been impossible with their advanced security protocols. Ambassador Kethvar stepped forward, activating the universal translator and ensuring his bio readings indicated peaceful intentions. "Admiral Martinez, I am Ambassador Kethvar of the Galactic Council Diplomatic Corps. We come seeking peaceful contact with your species to establish formal diplomatic relations." The human's expression didn't change, but her eyes seemed to study every detail of the bridge through the visual connection. "You're the ones who sent warships into our space 3 weeks ago. Those were patrol vessels conducting routine exploration," Kethvar explained carefully. "Their encounters with your forces were unfortunate misunderstandings due to lack of communication protocols." "Misunderstandings," Admiral Martinez repeated, her voice carrying a tone that the universal translator struggled to interpret. "Your exploration ships were armed with military-grade weapons, and were conducting active sensor sweeps of our defensive installations. In human terminology, that constitutes reconnaissance for hostile action." Captain Veltran exchanged glances with his crew. The human's interpretation of standard galactic exploration protocols was far more aggressive than anyone had anticipated. "Admiral," Ambassador Kethvar said diplomatically. I assure you that no hostile intent was meant. The Galactic Council seeks only peaceful coexistence and mutual beneficial relations with your species. Your Galactic Council, Admiral Martinez said, emphasizing the words with what seemed like skepticism. Tell me, Ambassador, how many species are represented in this council of yours? 47 sovereign star systems, representing over 200 billion sentient beings across the galaxy, Kethvar replied proudly. And how was this council formed? The Admiral asked. Kethvar hesitated. The formation of the Galactic Council was a complex historical topic that involved centuries of gradual expansion, diplomatic integration, and, in some cases, economic pressure or military intervention to bring reluctant species into the fold. Through peaceful negotiation and mutual agreement, he said, offering the standard diplomatic response. Admiral Martinez's expression shifted slightly, and what the humans might call a smile played across her features. However, the translator's emotional analysis suggested it was not a pleasant expression. Ambassador, our intelligence indicates that at least 12 of your member species were integrated into the council following what your records describe as pacification campaigns. Would you care to explain how military conquest constitutes peaceful negotiation? The question hit the diplomatic team like a physical blow. Somehow, the humans had accessed classified historical records that detailed the darker aspects of galactic expansion. Information that was supposed to be buried in secure archives, accessible only to the highest levels of government. How did you obtain that information? Captain Veltran demanded, momentarily forgetting diplomatic protocol. Captain, Admiral Martinez replied calmly, your species have been broadcasting radio signals, data transmissions, and quantum communications across the galaxy for centuries. Did you really think we weren't listening? The implications were staggering. If the humans had been monitoring galactic communications for that long, they would have access to military frequencies, diplomatic channels, scientific data, and potentially even personal communications between government officials. You've been spying on us, accused Ambassador Kethvar, his scales shifting to an angry red coloration. We've been gathering intelligence on potential threats, Admiral Martinez corrected. And based on what we've learned about your council's expansion methods, we have good reason to consider you a potential threat. We come in peace, Kethvar insisted. The Galactic Council offers advanced technology, cultural exchange, and protection under galactic law. Protection, Admiral Martinez repeated. Protection from whom? According to your own records, there haven't been any major conflicts in this galaxy for over 3 centuries. What exactly would we need protection from? The question was uncomfortably direct. The truth was that the Galactic Council's offer of protection was often protection from the Council itself, and the humans seemed to understand this perfectly. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for isolated species, Kethvar said carefully. There are pirates, rogue nations, and various natural hazards that Ambassador, Admiral Martinez interrupted. Let me save us both some time. We know about the hegemony wars, the forced integration protocols, and the economic dependency programs. We know how your council operates. You find a species with useful resources or strategic location, you make them an offer of membership, and if they refuse, you apply pressure until they comply. That's not, Kethvar began. Furthermore, the Admiral continued, we know about the technological suppression policies that prevent member species from developing weapons that might threaten Council authority. We know about the mandatory resource sharing agreements that ensure raw materials flow to core Council worlds. And we know about the cultural integration programs designed to eliminate what you call dangerous individualism. Every word hit with surgical precision. The humans hadn't just been monitoring communications. They had been analyzing galactic politics with a level of sophistication that suggested intelligence capabilities far beyond anything the Council possessed. What do you want? Ambassador Kethvar asked, his diplomatic composure finally cracking. What we want, Admiral Martinez replied, is for you to leave our space and not come back. Humanity will remain in our designated territory. We will not interfere with galactic politics. And, in exchange, the Galactic Council will leave us alone. That's impossible, Captain Veltran protested. No species in galactic history has been allowed to remain independent. The Council has protocols. Your protocols, Admiral Martinez said with that unsettling smile again, are not our concern. You will leave our space now, and you will not return. Any future violations of our territorial boundaries will be considered acts of war. You can't threaten the entire Galactic Council, Kethvar said desperately. We have fleets that number in the thousands, worlds with populations in the trillions. You're one species with a handful of ships. Ambassador, Admiral Martinez said, her voice taking on a tone that made even the universal translator register danger. You've seen what one of our ships can do to your patrol fleet. Would you like a demonstration of what our fleet can do to one of your worlds? The threat was delivered with such casual confidence that it sent a chill through every being on the diplomatic vessel's bridge. This is madness, Kethvar whispered. You would start a war that would devastate the galaxy. We wouldn't start it, Admiral Martinez corrected. Your council would start it by refusing to respect our sovereignty. We would simply finish it. Before anyone could respond, the human admiral delivered her final statement. You have 24 hours to clear our territorial space. After that, any non-human vessels found within our boundaries will be destroyed without warning. This conversation is over. The screen went dark, leaving the diplomatic team in stunned silence. Set course for the galactic core, Captain Veltran ordered quietly. Maximum possible speed. As the Harmony's voice turned away from human space, every being on board knew they were carrying news that would change the galaxy forever. The age of easy council expansion was over, and humanity had made it clear they would not be integrated peacefully. The only question now was whether the Galactic Council would accept this new reality or risk a war against an enemy that seemed to know everything about them while revealing almost nothing about themselves. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in continuous debate for 72 hours. The Great Chamber, normally a place of dignified discourse and careful deliberation, had become a battleground of competing philosophies and increasingly desperate proposals. Supreme Counselor Ael Thek called for order as Admiral Thexani of the Rigel Federation presented her military assessment. The Admiral's tentacles writhed with agitation as she manipulated the holographic display, showing tactical simulations that grew more dire with each iteration. Esteemed colleagues, Admiral Thexani began, I have run every possible combat scenario through our best strategic computers. The results are uniformly catastrophic. The hologram showed a simplified representation of the galaxy, with human territory marked as a dark sphere near the outer rim. Surrounding it were the positions of various council fleets, their numbers represented by glowing dots that seemed pitiful in comparison to the unknown capabilities within the human zone. A direct military assault on human space would require a minimum of 60% of our combined fleet strength, the Admiral continued. Even then, our projections show casualties exceeding 40% of attacking forces, and that assumes the humans have no more than 50 vessels of the type we've encountered. Counselor Vextra of the Centauri Coalition interrupted with a sharp click of her mechanical limbs. 40% casualties to subdue a single star system? Admiral, are you suggesting that one human ship is equivalent to 10 of ours? Based on observed performance data, that estimate may be conservative, Admiral Thexani replied grimly. Their weapons technology appears to be at least 50 years ahead of our current capabilities. Their defensive systems can shrug off our heaviest weapons, and their tactical doctrine is unlike anything in our databases. Impossible, scoffed General Krigstar of the Draconian military caste. No species achieves that level of technological advancement in isolation. They must have had outside assistance. Ambassador Kethvar, still recovering from his harrowing diplomatic mission, stood to address the council. His scales had returned to their normal blue-green coloration, but those who knew Zephyrian body language could see the subtle stress patterns still rippling beneath his skin. With respect, General, Kethvar said, I don't believe they had outside assistance. I believe they developed their technology in response to their environment. Everything about their ship design and tactical thinking suggests a species that learned to fight for survival on a scale we can barely comprehend. Explain, demanded Supreme Counselor Ael Thek. Kethvar activated his own holographic display, showing the limited data they had gathered about the human home system. Sol is what our scientists classify as a young, unstable system. The planet Earth orbits dangerously close to a variable star, experiences regular asteroid bombardments, and has a gravitational field that's nearly twice what most of us consider habitable. The image shifted to show Earth itself, a world of churning blue and green that looked beautiful from space, but whose data readings told a different story. The surface conditions are barely within acceptable parameters for carbon-based life, Kethvar continued. Violent weather systems, seismic activity, and an atmosphere that's technically poisonous to most galactic species. But that's not the worst part. What could be worse than that? Asked Counselor Kixmoth, his crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. They evolve alongside dozens of other predator species, Kethvar replied. Earth isn't just hostile in terms of environment. The planet is essentially one massive ecosystem designed around competitive survival. Every species on that world had to fight for resources, territory, and the right to continue existing. The implications slowly sank in across the chamber. Most galactic species had evolved on relatively peaceful worlds, developing intelligence as a tool for cooperation and resource management. The concept of an entire planet locked in constant evolutionary warfare was almost beyond comprehension. That would explain their aggression, Admiral Thexani mused. But not their technological advancement. Warfare doesn't necessarily accelerate scientific development. Actually, it does, interjected Dr. Yilmara, the Council's chief xenosociologist. We've studied the development patterns of several species, and there's a direct correlation between environmental pressure and innovation rate. The humans didn't just evolve to fight. They evolved to adapt, innovate, and overcome increasingly complex challenges. Dr. Yilmara brought up her own data display, showing human historical records that their intelligence networks had managed to intercept. Their recorded history shows constant technological advancement driven by military necessity. They've been fighting wars for their entire civilization, and each conflict forced them to develop new technologies to survive. That still doesn't explain ships that can destroy entire fleets, General Krixtar protested. Doesn't it? Dr. Yilmara challenged. Look at their development timeline. They went from primitive projectile weapons to nuclear fusion in less than a century. From their first spaceflight to interstellar travel in another century. Their rate of technological advancement is exponential, and it's been consistent for their entire recorded history. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. The humans weren't just naturally aggressive, they were naturally innovative, and they had been honing both traits for millennia. There's something else, Ambassador Kethvar added reluctantly. During my conversation with Admiral Martinez, she demonstrated access to our most classified information. They know about the hegemony wars, the integration protocols, everything. How was that possible? Demanded Supreme Counselor Nail Thek. They've been monitoring our communications for decades, possibly centuries, Kethvar explained. But more than that, they've been analyzing everything they've learned. Admiral Martinez understood our political structure, our expansion methods, and our military capabilities better than some of our own council members. Counselor Vextra's mechanical limbs clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among her species. You're suggesting they've been studying us like laboratory specimens. I'm suggesting they've been preparing, Kethvar corrected. Everything about that encounter was calculated. They knew exactly what we would offer, exactly how we would approach them, and exactly how to counter our diplomatic strategies. Then, what do you recommend? Asked Supreme Counselor Nail Thek. Before Kethvar could answer, the chamber's communication systems activated with an urgent priority signal. The quantum communication array, used only for the most critical emergency transmissions, began receiving a message from the outer territories. This is Governor Peldaz of the Kepler Mining Consortium, a panicked voice echoed through the chamber. We're under attack by unknown vessels. They appeared without warning and are demanding our immediate withdrawal from what they claim is human space. The holographic display automatically shifted to show the Kepler system, a mineral-rich region that had been under council development for over a decade. The mining installations there represented billions of credits in infrastructure and employed over 1 million workers. Governor Peldaz, Admiral Thexani responded, "What is the nature of the attacking force?" 3 ships came to reply, but they're unlike anything in our databases. They've destroyed our orbital defense platforms without taking any damage, and They're broadcasting a message that we have 12 hours to evacuate all personnel or face complete destruction. 3 ships against an entire mining consortium, General Krixtar muttered. It's impossible. But even as he spoke, the sensor data from the Kepler system was being transmitted to the council chambers. The 3 attacking vessels matched the energy signatures and design characteristics of the ship that had destroyed the Zephyrian patrol fleet. They're expanding their territorial claims, Admiral Thexani realized. The Kepler system is over 60 light-years from their homeworld. 73 light-years, Dr. Yilmara corrected. They're claiming a sphere of space larger than some of our member nations. Supreme Counselor El Thek stood slowly, his ancient frame conveying the weight of decision. Admiral Thexani, how long would it take to mobilize a fleet to defend the Kepler system? 48 hours for a minimal force, 72 for sufficient strength to challenge the human vessels, the Admiral replied. That's too long, Counselor Vextra pointed out. They've given the miners 12 hours to evacuate. Then, we let them evacuate and retake the system later, General Krixtar suggested. With what? Ambassador Kethvar asked pointedly. Admiral, what are our actual chances of retaking a system that the humans have decided to claim? Admiral Thexani consulted her tactical computers for several long moments before answering. Assuming they follow the same defensive strategy we've observed, we would need to commit at least 20 capital ships and accept losses in the range of 60 to 70%. 20 capital ships, Supreme Counselor Aelthek repeated slowly. To retake 1 mining system from 3 human vessels. The mathematics were devastating. If the humans could defend their territorial claims with that kind of effectiveness, any attempt to contain their expansion would require the majority of the Council's military resources, leaving the rest of galactic space defenseless. There is another option, Dr. Yilmara said quietly. We could accept their territorial claims and negotiate a non-aggression treaty. Absolutely not, General Krixtar thundered. The Galactic Council does not negotiate with terrorists. They're not terrorists, Ambassador Kethvar said firmly. They're a sovereign species defending what they consider their rightful territory. The fact that we disagree with their borders doesn't make them criminals. Then what do you propose? Supreme Counselor Nael Thek asked. Kethvar looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. I propose we do something the Galactic Council has never had to do before. I propose we recognize the humans as an independent, non-aligned power and formally acknowledge their territorial claims. The suggestion sent shockwaves through the chamber. For over 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had operated under the principle that all intelligent species would eventually be integrated into the Council structure. The idea of a permanent independent power was revolutionary. The precedent alone would be catastrophic, Counselor Kixmoth protested. If we allow one species to remain independent, others will demand the same right. Others don't have ships that can destroy our fleets, Admiral Thexani pointed out grimly. As the debate continued, more reports began arriving from the Kepler system. The human ships were systematically dismantling the mining infrastructure while giving the workers time to evacuate. They weren't acting like conquerors or pirates. They were acting like a military force reclaiming occupied territory. The question, Supreme Counselor Aelthek said finally, is whether we're willing to fight a war we cannot win to maintain a principle we may no longer be able to enforce. The chamber fell silent as each representative contemplated the unthinkable, the first challenge to Galactic Council authority that might actually succeed. Fleet Admiral Zorketh of the Combined Galactic Defense Force stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the tactical display with growing unease. Around him, the largest military fleet ever assembled in galactic history moved through hyperspace toward what the humans call the Sol System. 237 ships representing the combined might of 47 civilizations had been gathered for what the Council officially termed a demonstration of resolve. The fleet included everything from massive dreadnoughts capable of cracking planets to swift destroyers designed for rapid strike operations. It was, by any measure, an overwhelming display of military power. Admiral, reported Captain Hexmar from the tactical station, we're receiving long-range sensor data from the outer edge of human space. The defensive perimeter appears to be extensive. Zorketh studied the incoming data with increasing concern. The humans had constructed a network of monitoring stations, weapons platforms, and what appear to be mobile defense units throughout their claimed territory. The sophistication of their defensive grid was staggering. How many human vessels are we detecting? Zorketh asked. Difficult to determine with certainty, Captain Hexmara replied. Their ships seem to be using some form of stealth technology that interferes with our sensors. Confirmed contacts number at least 40, but there could be significantly more. The Admiral's confidence wavered slightly. Intelligence estimates had suggested the humans possessed between 50 and 100 ships of the type they had encountered. If those estimates were wrong, the entire operation could be walking into a trap. Communication from the Council flagship, reported the communications officer. Admiral Thexany requests a command conference. Minutes later, Zorketh found himself in the fleet's shared tactical space, a virtual environment where the commanding officers of all major vessels could meet regardless of physical location. The gathering represented the greatest concentration of military leadership the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Thexany appeared first, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. Fellow commanders, we're approaching the point of no return. Once we cross into human space, we'll be committed to this course of action. General Krickstar's hologram materialized next, his draconian features set in determined lines. We come too far to back down now. If we retreat without engaging, the humans will see it as weakness and expand even more aggressively. The political ramifications of failure are severe, agreed Admiral Velthani of the Centauri fleet. The Council's authority is already being questioned by several member worlds. If we can't deal with one isolated species, how can we maintain order across the galaxy? Fleet Admiral Zorketh nodded grimly. The pressure from the Council was immense. 3 more mining systems had fallen to human expansion in the past 2 weeks, each one taken by small task forces that destroyed all resistance without suffering casualties. The pattern was becoming clear. The humans were systematically clearing their claimed territory of all non-human presence. What's our intelligence on their home system defenses? Asked Admiral Kethmori of the Vegan Defense Corps. Captain Hexmara, serving as the fleet's intelligence coordinator, activated a tactical display of the Sol system. Long-range scans show massive orbital installations around the 3rd planet, designated Earth. Multiple space stations, what appear to be construction facilities, and at least a dozen large vessels of unknown configuration. Unknown configuration? General Krickstar inquired. The ships in their home system are larger than anything we've encountered so far, Captain Hexmara explained. Some of them appear to be over 5 kilometers in length. We're not sure if they're warships, space stations, or something else entirely. The implications were troubling. If the human ships they had already faced were merely patrol vessels, what capabilities might their capital ships possess? There's something else, Captain Hexmara continued. We're detecting organized traffic patterns throughout the system. The humans appear to have a significant industrial infrastructure, possibly sufficient to support a population in the billions. Billions, Admiral Thexany repeated quietly. A military-industrial complex supporting billions of individuals with their technological capabilities. We might be facing a production capacity that exceeds the combined output of several Council worlds. Before anyone could respond, the fleet's communication systems suddenly activated. Every screen in the tactical space displayed the same image. A human male in what appeared to be a military uniform of dark gray fabric with unfamiliar insignia. This is Admiral James Harrison of the Terran Defense Force, the human said calmly. You are approaching the sovereign territory of humanity with what appears to be a military fleet of significant size. Explain your intentions immediately. Fleet Admiral Zorketh stepped forward, ensuring his universal translator was functioning properly. Admiral Harrison, I am Fleet Admiral Zorketh of the Combined Galactic Defense Force. We are here to negotiate the return of illegally occupied systems and the establishment of proper boundaries between human and galactic space. The human admiral's expression didn't change, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he was analyzing every detail of the conversation. Admiral Zorketh, the systems you refer to as illegally occupied are within the territorial boundaries established by humanity. We have made our position clear to your diplomatic representatives. Those boundaries are not recognized by the Galactic Council, General Krigstar interjected. No species has the right to claim such vast regions of space without Council approval. General, Admiral Harrison replied, his voice taking on a tone that the Universal Translator marked as dangerous. Humanity does not recognize the Galactic Council's authority over our territorial claims. We are not members of your council. We did not agree to your expansion protocols, and we will not be bound by your territorial limitations. This is preposterous, Admiral Velthani protested. The council has maintained galactic order for over a millennium. You cannot simply ignore established law. Your law, Admiral Harrison corrected, established by your council for your benefit. Tell me, Admiral, how many of your member species joined the council voluntarily versus how many were pressured into membership through economic or military coercion? The question struck at the heart of galactic politics. While the council officially maintained that all members had joined voluntarily, the reality was far more complex. Economic pressure, technological dependency, and in some cases outright military intervention had been used to bring reluctant species into the council structure. The council offers protection and technological advancement, Fleet Admiral Zorketh said carefully. Membership benefits all species involved. At the cost of sovereignty and independence, Admiral Harrison replied. Humanity declines your offer, Admiral. We will maintain our own territory, our own government, and our own future. That is not an option, General Krigstar declared. No species in this galaxy exists outside the council structure. You will negotiate acceptable boundaries and accept council oversight or face the consequences. Admiral Harrison's expression shifted slightly, and what might have been a smile played across his features. However, the emotional analysis suggested it was not a pleasant expression. General, you currently have 237 ships approaching our territory. We know the exact composition of your fleet, the capabilities of your weapon systems, and the tactical doctrines of each participating species. Are you prepared for the consequences of what you're suggesting? The casual confidence was unnerving. How could the humans know the exact size and composition of the fleet when even some of the participating commanders weren't privy to that information? You're bluffing, Admiral Velthani accused. No intelligence network could provide that level of detail. The Regellian dreadnought Cosmic Fury, flagship of Admiral Thexani, Admiral Harrison replied calmly. Modified with experimental quantum torpedo systems that have never been tested in actual combat. The Draconian assault carrier War's End, carrying General Krigstar's personal fighter squadron equipped with prototype plasma cannons. The Centauri battle cruiser Stellar Crown, Admiral Velthani's command ship, recently fitted with new shield generators that theoretically provide 30% greater protection than standard designs. Each detail was accurate. Impossibly, terrifyingly accurate. The humans not only knew what ships were in the fleet, they knew about classified modifications and experimental weapons that were supposed to be known only to the highest levels of military command. Admiral Texani whispered. We've been monitoring your communications, your supply chains, your research facilities, and your military exercises for decades, Admiral Harrison explained. We know your fleet's strengths, your tactical weaknesses, and your strategic limitations. Did you really think you could hide anything from us while broadcasting your activities across the galaxy? The revelation was staggering. The humans had been conducting intelligence operations on a galactic scale, gathering information that would have required infiltration of the most secure facilities in Council space. Your spies, General Krigstar accused. We're cautious, Admiral Harrison corrected. When we discovered that an expansionist galactic government was nearby, we made it our business to learn everything we could about their capabilities and intentions. What we learned convinced us that isolation was our best option for survival. And if we refused to accept your isolation, Fleet Admiral Zorketh asked. Admiral Harrison's expression became completely serious. Then you'll discover why humanity has managed to survive on one of the most hostile planets in the galaxy while developing the most advanced military technology you've ever encountered. You're threatening the combined fleets of 47 worlds, Admiral Velthani said incredulously. I'm informing you of the consequences of your choices, Admiral Harrison replied. You have 1 hour to reverse course and leave human territory. After that, Any vessel within our boundaries will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. And if we choose to test your capabilities? General Krigstar challenged. Admiral Harrison's smile returned, and this time the universal translator registered it as predatory. Then, you'll provide valuable data for our tactical computers while demonstrating to the rest of the galaxy why membership in the Galactic Council should be considered optional rather than mandatory. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the military leadership of the galaxy's greatest powers staring at empty screens. Orders, Admiral? Captain Hexmara asked quietly. Fleet Admiral Zorketh looked around at the other commanders in the tactical space. Each face reflected the same mixture of uncertainty and determination. They had come too far to retreat without testing human capabilities, but the casual confidence of Admiral Harrison suggested they were walking into a carefully prepared trap. Continue on course, Zorketh ordered finally. But prepare all vessels for immediate combat operations. We're about to discover whether human confidence is justified or whether they're simply skilled at psychological warfare. As the largest fleet in galactic history approached the outer edge of human space, every commander knew they were about to participate in the most important battle in galactic history. The outcome would determine whether the Galactic Council's authority would continue unchallenged or whether a new power had emerged that could reshape the political structure of the entire galaxy. The silence in the emergency council chambers was deafening. For the first time in galactic history, the assembled representatives had no words. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed the aftermath of what military historians would later call the Battle of the Outer Rim, though to call it a battle was to dignify what had actually been a systematic demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority. Supreme Counselor Thek stood slowly, his ancient frame seeming even more frail than usual. Around him, the representatives of 47 worlds sat in stunned shock, their species-specific displays of distress creating a symphony of fear and bewilderment. Fleet Admiral Zorketh, Thek said quietly, his voice carrying across the chamber despite its weakness. Your report. The Admiral materialized as a hologram, his image flickering slightly due to the quantum communication system's instability. Behind him, what remained of his flagship's bridge showed clear signs of catastrophic damage. Sparking control panels, exposed structural supports, and emergency lighting painted a picture of a ship barely holding together. Supreme Counselor, Zorketh began, his voice hollow with defeat. The combined Galactic Defense Force has suffered total defeat. Of 237 ships that entered human space, 43 have been destroyed, 112 are severely damaged and non-operational, and the remainder are retreating under human escort. The numbers hit the chamber like physical blows. Ambassador Kethvar felt his scales shift to the deep blue of shock, while Admiral Thexani's tentacles writhed in patterns that indicated species-wide trauma responses. Ow! Counselor Vextra demanded, her mechanical limbs clicking rapidly. How did they achieve such results against the largest fleet in galactic history? Fleet Admiral Zorketh consulted his tactical display, though the gesture seemed more for emotional support than informational necessity. The engagement began exactly 1 hour after Admiral Harrison's ultimatum expired. Long-range sensors detected approximately 60 human vessels moving to intercept our fleet. 60 ships against over 200. General Krigstar interrupted. What happened to our numerical superiority? It became irrelevant, Zorketh replied grimly. The human ships didn't engage us in conventional fleet combat. Instead, they demonstrated weapons technology that makes our most advanced systems look primitive. The Admiral activated a tactical recording, showing the initial moments of the engagement. The galactic fleet appeared as a massive formation of glowing dots, arranged in the classic battle formation that had been refined over centuries of warfare. Approaching them were the human vessels, moving in loose formations that seemed to ignore every principle of galactic naval doctrine. The humans opened fire at a range that should have been impossible, Zorketh explained. Their projectile weapons have effective ranges exceeding anything in our databases. While our fleets were still maneuvering to bring weapons to bear, they were already taking casualties. The recording showed the devastating effectiveness of human kinetic weapons. Ships that had withstood decades of warfare were torn apart by projectiles that moved faster than most galactic vessels could achieve at full acceleration. Shield generators designed to deflect energy weapons proved useless against the raw kinetic force. But that's not the worst part. Admiral Zorketh continued. Their accuracy was perfect. Every shot found its target, and every target was struck in precisely the location that would cause maximum damage with minimum projectile expenditure. It was as if they knew the exact specifications of every ship in our fleet. Because they did, Ambassador Kethvar said quietly. Admiral Harrison told us they had been monitoring our activities for decades. They knew our ships better than we did. The engagement lasted 17 minutes, Zorketh reported. 17 minutes to render the largest military force in galactic history combat ineffective. When it became clear the continued resistance would result in complete annihilation, I ordered a general surrender. And the humans' response? Supreme Counselor Inael Thek asked. They accepted immediately, Zorketh replied, his voice carrying a note of surprise. Admiral Harrison personally guaranteed the safety of all surviving personnel and offered medical assistance for the wounded. They've been providing aid to damaged vessels throughout the withdrawal. The gesture was as psychologically devastating as the military defeat. The humans had demonstrated they could destroy the galactic fleet at will, then immediately showed mercy and humanitarian concern for their defeated enemies. It was a level of strategic sophistication that suggested they understood warfare as more than just military action. Were their demands? Counselor Kixmoth asked, his crystalline form pulsing with agitated light patterns. Fleet Admiral Zorketh activated another communication channel, and Admiral Harrison's image appeared in the chamber. The human looked calm and professional, though there was something in his expression that suggested he was analyzing every detail of the council chamber's occupants. Supreme Counselor Thek, Admiral Harrison said, inclining his head slightly in what appeared to be a respectful gesture. I believe it's time for a more direct conversation about the future of galactic politics. Admiral Harrison, Thek replied carefully. We acknowledge the superiority of your military capabilities. What are humanity's intentions regarding the Galactic Council? Our intentions are simple, Harrison replied. Humanity will maintain sovereignty over our claimed territory. We will not interfere with galactic politics outside our borders, and we expect the same courtesy in return. However, there are some adjustments that need to be made to current galactic policies. Adjustments? Admiral Thexani asked nervously. The Galactic Council's expansion methods are no longer acceptable, Admiral Harrison said bluntly. The practice of forcing species into membership through economic pressure or military intervention ends now. Any future expansion must be genuinely voluntary, with full disclosure of membership requirements and consequences. The demand struck at the core of how the Galactic Council had operated for over a millennium. Economic integration, technological dependency, and military pressure had been the primary tools for bringing new species into the galactic community. That's impossible, General Krixtar protested. How can we maintain galactic order without standardized policies and unified authority? You'll have to learn, Admiral Harrison replied calmly. Humanity will serve as guarantors of independence for any species that chooses to remain outside the council structure. Any attempt to force membership on unwilling populations will result in human intervention. You're establishing yourself as a galactic police force, Counselor Vextra accused. We're establishing ourselves as a check on galactic authoritarianism, Harrison corrected. The council can continue to exist and grow, but only through genuine cooperation and mutual benefit, not through coercion. Ambassador Kethvar leaned forward, his diplomatic instincts engaging despite the unprecedented situation. Admiral, what you're proposing would require fundamental changes to galactic law and policy. The council structure itself would need to be reformed. That's correct, Admiral Harrison agreed. And to facilitate that process, humanity is prepared to offer something the council has never had before: technological advancement without strings attached. The statement sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Galactic Council's power had always been based on technological superiority, the ability to offer advanced systems and capabilities to less developed species in exchange for political and economic concessions. What kind of technological advancement? Dr. Yilmara asked, her scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic caution. Defensive technologies primarily, Admiral Harrison replied. Shield generators, sensor systems, and communication networks that would allow individual species to maintain their independence without being vulnerable to external pressure. We have no interest in arming the galaxy, but we're willing to help protect it from future conflicts. And in exchange? Supreme Counselor Nael Thek asked. Recognition of our territorial claims and a formal treaty guaranteeing non-interference, Harrison replied. Plus the establishment of new protocols for galactic expansion that require genuine consent from target populations. The offer was unprecedented. The humans were essentially proposing to democratize galactic civilization, removing the coercive elements that had allowed the Council to maintain control for centuries. What if we refuse? Counselor Kixmoth asked. Admiral Harrison's expression didn't change, but his voice took on a tone that made the Universal Translator register warning signals. Then, you'll discover that humanity's military capabilities extend far beyond what you witnessed today. The fleet you sent to test our resolve encountered our patrol vessels and defensive platforms. You haven't seen our actual military forces yet. You mean there are more ships? Admiral Thexani asked in horror. Significantly more, Harrison confirmed. The vessels that engaged your fleet represent less than 5% of human naval capacity. We've been preparing for this confrontation for decades, and we've prepared thoroughly. The revelation was the final blow to any thoughts of resistance. If the ships that had destroyed the galactic fleet were merely patrol vessels, then humanity's true military power was beyond calculation. I need to consult with the full council, Supreme Counselor El Thek said finally. Of course, Admiral Harrison replied. But while you're deliberating, understand that the old era of galactic expansion is over. Species will choose their own futures, with or without the Council's approval. The only question is whether the Council will adapt to this new reality or find itself increasingly irrelevant. The communication ended, leaving the Council leadership to contemplate a fundamental shift in galactic civilization. 3 months later, the Galactic Cooperation Treaty was signed, establishing humanity as an independent power and guarantor of species sovereignty. The old Galactic Council was reformed as the Galactic Federation, with membership based on genuine consent rather than coercion. The age of forced integration was over. In its place, a new era of cooperative development began, backed by the quiet assurance that humanity's fleets would ensure that no species would ever again be forced to surrender its independence for the promise of protection. The galaxy had learned a fundamental lesson. Sometimes the greatest strength comes not from the ability to conquer, but from the wisdom to know when to stop trying.